And how you're producing, there are things that are called sub-industries. And what this program does is it just raises awareness that manufacturing just isn't this one homogeneous thing. It takes a lot of different forms. And West Central Ohio is especially noted for being as diverse as it is. And as you'll see as we go through the different sub-industries in the region, you'll find that there are some prominent companies that fit that sub-industry. For example, you'll have chemical processing, and these are 3 companies right here in this region. They're all consortium members, but you got Procter & Gamble, Ashland Specialty Products, Potash Corporation, and there are a number of other companies here that can fit under that sub-industry. Then when you get into electronics, down in your way in Shelby County, Emerson, they're into electronics. There's some people actually in this region who will work for General Electric. Kind of surprising that they make the commute, but General Electric also fits under this sub-industry. Appliance manufacturing, Whirlpool, obviously the most prominent in this area. There might be some smaller ones that I'm not aware of, but with 5 plants in Ohio, Whirlpool's got a very big presence in the state of Ohio. Whoop. And then furniture, Souders, they're up in Archbold. Town of Archbold, about 4,000 people, and Souders employs about 3,000. Tell you what kind of a presence they have there. But their niche is ready to assemble furniture. Some more sub-industries. We are very, very big in the food sub-industry. Not just the presence of food sub-industries, but some of the biggest in the country, or if not the world. Rudolph Foods, you see in that upper left corner, they are the world's largest producer of pork rinds, and they're just about a 5-minute drive from the campus here. Di Fratelli, that's actually under the company name of Herzl's. They're big into research and development. They're based up in the southern suburbs of Toledo, around Northwood, Perrysburg, up in that area. But they also have a plant in Ottawa, Ohio, and they like to work a lot on developing new hybrids, do a lot of research and development in tomato products. They actually got their start making sauerkraut back in the day. But that's another food industry for West Central Ohio. Some of the other big ones you see, Cooper, they've got pretty good sized plants in St. Henry and Van Wert. I think they're the largest processor of turkey in the state. You've got pet food is also under this sub-industry, so you've got ProPet and St. Mary's. Now it's Mars Pet Food. They used to be Procter & Gamble Pet Care, but Mars had bought them out a couple of years ago. I think that's the largest dog food producing factory in the United States. Campbell Soup up in Napoleon, largest soup producing company in the United States. Heinz, the plant produces more ketchup than any other plant in the United States, located over in Fremont. So Ohio, very, very prominent in food sub-industry. Then you have machining. A couple of members of the consortium, Crendel Machine, they're located in Delphus. Their primary product had been making the insulator blowing apparatuses. They fabricated and they produced the bins and the apparatus where you blow insulation for your attic. But during the recession, they found that they needed to get a little more diverse, and so they have broadened the products that they make, and they're back to about what they were pre-recession. But they took a hit by having so much of their product just in one industry. Gasdorf, they're a machining company located on the north side of Lima. I know they put in a lot of machining systems and companies around here like Danam. When we toured the Procter & Gamble plant about a year ago, one whole system that they had just installed, that was produced by Gasdorf here in Lima. Also, Stone and Minerals, National Lime and Stone, they've got a lot of facilities in this part of the country. Some more sub-industries, oil and petroleum. Not too many in the United States, but we do have one, that's Husky. Plastics, Amatec, you probably see them when you drive by Wapakoneta at the I-75 and US 33 interchange. I always thought when you say plastics, it's injection molding or just your traditional plastics plant, but actually what they produce are the pellets that the plastics companies use to make their products. They don't necessarily own the product, they're contracted, and they make the pellets for the prominent pellet manufacturers like A. Schulman and Faro, Exxon, and companies like that. They bulk them up in 1,500-pound packages, and they go to their destination. This is a metal forging. foundries, Superior Forge and Steel. There are a number of others, Wemco, you've got St. Mary's Foundry. Some of your automotive companies in the area also have foundry operations, such as AAP and St. Mary's, Kenton Iron Products. We've got quite a few in this region. Printing, manufacturing includes your newspaper companies. And I see a lot of job postings for a lot of the manufacturers or a lot of the newspapers in this region. Lima News, Findlay Courier, they're always advertising for press operators, and when you think about it, you need to have manufacturing type skills. You need to know how to troubleshoot, how to set up machinery, and so forth. So the printing industry is also considered manufacturing. Leather goods, over at Ada, just a few minutes to the east of us, they produce footballs. Has anybody ever been in the Wilson plant over at Ada? Interesting thing, we talk about automation and technology and so forth, but they haven't quite figured yet how to do it in that company. It still requires a lot of labor-intensive work to make footballs, and I've always told people, just from my observation of touring that plant, I wouldn't want to get in an arm wrestling competition with any of those guys. When you think that they put together these stiff panels of leather and they're pulling them over the jig and they're holding the tension and they're sewing them together, and these guys got high forearms. Very, very labor-intensive job. They do see some possible salvos being fired. They said that Nike had purchased a plant in Texas, I believe it was, that's producing football. They're keeping their eyes out for that to see if they've got some technology that's enabling them to produce footballs at a lower cost that don't compromise the quality. You got to stay on top of what your competition's doing. The thing that Wilson always had going for them was that they were produced in the United States. The NFL endorsed them for that reason, but if Nike now has a manufacturing plant and they're producing things just as good, if not better, in the United States, all of a sudden we've got some competition for that industry. And then international paper industry. Some of you are from around there. Anybody tour the international paper plant? Just had an expansion a couple of years ago, added 100, 125 workers. I toured the plant several years ago. Interesting thing about that is it's just not a matter of producing the product. You also have a lot of proprietary materials that you have here. If they're producing cups that have the Pepsi logo, you got to have just that right tone of blue with the right tone of red to produce the Pepsi logo. So they got to be very, very careful as to what they print, because if those colors don't match Pepsi's specifications, then they reject the product. And just want to take a step back too. I can get going and talking pretty fast. If you've got questions, feel free to interject, raise your hands, and we're here to teach you just how to present this class. And then finally, sub-industry. I think it goes without saying, we're very, very big in the automotive, whether it's assembling cars as they do with the Honda plants or the parts plants, the Lima engine plant, the General Motors foundry up at Defiance. And if you don't think that people go to Defiance from here to go to work, just take a trip on State Route 115 during the time when they're coming and going to work. You get a pretty steady line of traffic, line of people going to work in Defiance, or they're coming home. Unbelievable just how many people will work. And then when the automotive industry was downsizing during the recession, when everything settled down, and I think it's still quite the case, there were some people who were working in northeastern Ohio. They commute to Lima. They'll stay overnight for a week and then go back home for weekends. You pull in quite a commuter traffic in the automotive industry especially. High performance manufacturing, the modern workplace. Again, you're doing a lot of teamwork. You're working with a lot of different people, getting ideas, putting them together. It's not the case where you just, working in your silo and 8 hours, you punch your clock and you go home. There's a lot of interaction in the modern workplace if they're practicing those principles. Again, interacting a lot with technology. If when we complete the classroom part of this, we're going to be showing the integrated systems troubleshooting component of this class, and what it is just a condensed version of just how much we use technology, and hopefully we inspire some people who are in this program to pursue some additional training, seeing that this is where some opportunities are. This could be an enjoyable career, and go from there. The other thing about the modern workplace in manufacturing is a big emphasis on quality. When I was working in manufacturing 30-some years ago, the quality really wasn't as big of an emphasis, at least not to the people on the floor. There might have been a quality director, a quality coordinator, and they would do some sampling and so forth. But lots changed in 30 years. The global market, because of the introduction of foreign products who had high standards in quality, it's forced us to bring our game up in the United States. And quality is now incorporated at every level in the workforce. It's not just having a coordinator issuing directives from the top down. Everybody has to have an understanding of some level of continuous improvement in quality, even at the entry level. And in that 2013 manufacturing survey that I was referring to at the top of this program, that point was really driven home. We interviewed the companies on what their skill requirements are at the basic level, and that then came out loud and clear. A majority of the companies said that entry-level employees needed to have an understanding, at least, of statistical process control, continuous improvement, and overall quality, even at the entry level. Not necessarily being proficient like a quality supervisor or anything like that, but they needed to understand the concepts of continuous improvement. And that's something that we have incorporated in this class in response to that survey, and we'll be, dabbling in a little bit of that in the afternoon part of this program. And here's a before and after, if you will, about what manufacturing was like in days past and what it is like today. Yesterday, you tended to have one role. You went to that place, you did the repetitive work for 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever your shift was, and then you clocked out and you were done for the day. You followed orders. The supervisor was the person who issued the orders. If you did have a problem, you took it to your foreman, your supervisor. You tend to work alone. Quality was another person's responsibility. Things were done more manually. And safety was not as much of an emphasis as it is today. Today, broader responsibilities. Everybody's expected to take part in making decisions, more teamwork, committees. Before I had this job as the director of the consortium, I was between jobs. I'd lost my job as a director of a public agency, so I was scrambling to get employment to hold things over until I found a permanent job. So I worked at UPS up at Findlay. They were the ones that loaded the delivery cars and sent them out. Even though that was more distribution and logistics than manufacturing, a lot of the principles of manufacturing were incorporated there. And one of the biggest emphasis was working as a team. We met regularly to discuss safety, how to do things more efficiently in terms of getting packages loaded onto the cars accurately and things along that line. More teamwork involved. And again, advanced technology and safety is a bigger role. That's because of our litigious society. And just to show that this isn't something that we just formulated and put in the classroom, this was actually given to us at an auto summit a couple of years ago from the Ford engine plant, and it almost mirrors that dichotomy that I had on the previous slide. You go from people doing things individually, now you're in team, you're multi-skilled, you cross-train. You didn't do that in years past. So, even a prominent company, a unionized company at that, they're even getting more into this modern manufacturing concept. These are some general titles and roles of a high-performance manufacturing worker. They go under the category of technologists. If you look at your job postings, you might see technician, things along that line. That covers a lot of your entry-level type jobs. Again, your high-performance manufacturers, they deal more in problem solving. They welcome ideas from people. They do brainstorming. If you got an idea about how to address a situation with your company, that's more welcome than what it was in years past. you got to stay on top of things and observe what your competition is doing. So you're an industry observer. It might mean reading things, or it might, if you have connections with other companies, finding out just what they're doing and how they're doing it without compromising proprietary information, of course. And again, you're more broadly skilled. That was something that I've seen in a lot of the manufacturers that I've been visiting. People, they're not just a one-skilled person. They're expected to do machining, do a little bit of maintenance, do a little bit of everything, much more than it was several years ago. And again, you're being a team player, and then of course if you're expected to be more broadly skilled, you've got to be flexible. Technologists, problem solvers and decision makers, just going to be going through here. Idea people, we're just going to be buzzing right through here. Anybody have questions or comment as we're going through this? These are, this is actually the PowerPoint presentation that you could use in your classroom, and with the script you can enhance off of that. If you've got examples that you can bring to actually drive home the point visually, you're welcome to do that.
And this PowerPoint's on the
yes.
On the subject.
You have a flash drive in your packet. And actually we have two versions of these PowerPoints. If you want the one like this that's a little more visual, you're welcome to use that, follow the script. We've got one that's more text oriented if your students are more comfortable with that sort of thing. But yeah, that material is in your flash drive. Again, you got to be adaptable. Not just adaptable in terms of being able to work at multiple places, but adaptable is that if the company's staying on top of developments in the industry, they're often bringing in new software or they're bringing in something else, and you've got to be able and willing to learn that new software. I mean, you work here on a college campus, you got to do that to a great extent too, and that's not manufacturing, but there's always some kind of technology, program, software that we're expected to learn. There are manufacturing concentrations, total of 6. And what these are just general categories of what a manufacturing worker can do. One of them, the production worker. Basic skills for a production worker is to set up, monitor, operate the equipment. And then another one, process development. This is where you're actually, you might involve some R&D, improving your process. Again, this comes from, feedback, pooling your people, listening to ideas and so forth, but there are some people whose primary function is to improve process development. Some of the job postings we see and send out to students in our Pathway program, especially if they're in the engineering area, they need to be able to communicate and introduce new ideas to the workers and sell it to them. Quality assurance is another concentration. And again, not just making the product, making sure the product is satisfying the customer, and so that you can retain that business and expand it in the future. And this has probably gotten the biggest emphasis over the years, the health, safety, and environmental control, just because of our litigious society. Workplace accidents, they happened, but they didn't have the financial consequences of the past. Now, if you have a history of workplace accidents, you could face legal action, or you're going to be paying more for workers' comp. There are consequences, and there's just greater emphasis on safety, and that's why students need to be prepared to understand that you just don't do things, you do things safely. And this is in your maintenance area. Very in-demand area of manufacturing. If you've got skills to install and maintain and troubleshoot, there's a lot of companies that are begging to have you come work for them. And that's another concentration in manufacturing. Something that's really been picking up either as a standalone industry or within the company itself, and that's logistics and inventory control. There's a little bit of a science to that. In fact, my son he has a degree in business, and he got into logistics and distribution for a company based in Chicago, but he's in charge of distribution of the product in the western United States. And he'll tell you there's a bit of a science to that, following spreadsheets, some troubleshooting skills if things are not getting to its destination in the quantities and in the time that it should. it's up to him to make sure that it gets handled. That sometimes you're shipping the product even across the Mexican border. There's another set of issues with that. So that's becoming an increasingly large part of a manufacturing employment or a career.
Quick question.
Yes.
The pages that are referenced in the in the module in the binder, is that in the student handbook? Is that where those pages that are referenced are that?
Yeah, the student handbooks. There's a stack of them there. We'll pass them out. Not as comprehensive as what you have in your teacher binder.
Right.
But
right.
yeah, and actually what you've got in the student books, there's pages which outline it with lines for them to take notes so that they can follow along with the program.
I saw those page numbers, so I figured it referenced the student book. I just want to make sure that's what it.
Well, and you might see some page numbers in that too. There's a textbook that we actually had taken a lot of the material from. I don't know if you're familiar with the manufacturing, it's MSSC, Manufacturing Standards something Council. A lot of the program that we based this basic pathway off came from MSSC, which is a nationally recognized manufacturing credential. Just wrapping up Module 1, expectations of your manufacturing job. Dress appropriately for the job. This is more in the line of soft skills. Some people might just take these things for granted, but you want to dress safely and smartly for the job, especially if there's moving machinery and so forth. It could really cost you a serious injury. Yes.
Real quick point. I came from the academic side. One thing I will say on the soft skills that was very evident with our students when we were at Whirlpool, they lack the soft skills. Whenever you have the opportunity to say, hey, this is how you dress, I don't think that maybe 4 of those students really grasped the concept of, yes, I'm here today at Whirlpool, there's 30 of us here, but this is the interview. I am in a setting where the general manager of the plant is looking at me. I'm in a setting where how I appear, how I interact with others in this meeting will impact his decision. And the human resources people's room, or in that room looking at you. You're on spot while you're there, and they're looking at you. Several of these students just did not have those skills, and it was so obvious they didn't have those skills. And everybody that the Whirlpool manufacturer brought in to talk to us, they had those skills. They were very strong. The one young apprentice was very impressive. And he laid out how this program and other programs like this had really benefited him. Remember, he was talking about going back and learning after seeing the classwork and putting hands on. I just wanted to say that this is so important. Some of those kids looked like they were ready to go out on an afternoon and play soccer or something. Others were dressed appropriately and looked like they belonged in a manufacturing setting, but you could watch the interactions with the plant engineer and other people when we went on the tour of the plant. They were just looking at these young people and just like, he's dismissed, she's dismissed, because the interactions weren't solid. One young man was very impressive, and at the end I found out why he was so impressive. He had already gotten a job there and was working for them. Yeah. And he was actually a night worker in this program and was working there.
Well,
impressive.
Also to add to what Aubrey was saying, we have a supervisor leadership series that we offer here monthly at Road State, and this is where companies can send their mid-level supervisors for training on various topics which concern, how to supervise the employees that are working for you. And Michael Borden, he's got all kinds of anecdotes and research that he has found, and just to talk about some things that Aubrey was just mentioning. Some places, it's not so much how they dress and how they conducted themselves during the interview. They'll actually send somebody, for lack of a better word, a spy, to actually greet the person before they come into the building, just to see, maybe if they're driving an old jalopy, maybe they can't help that, but just see how they, whether they're driving a garbage can on wheels, they're just conducting themselves very sloppy. They look for things like that. It's really gotten tricky and sophisticated for people to get jobs. It's not just the where do you see yourself in 5 years and tell me about yourself type of questions. There's a lot of behind the scenes looking and interviewing. It's a bit of a trick now to stay on top of things. And those kinds of things are actually outlined in your teacher's books. There's a whole list of questions that students could get in an actual job interview that they may not expect, and it's good to get them prepared to think about how to answer these types of questions, because the interview is a very important part of their success in landing that job. They can have the grade point average, they can have the technical skills, but how they conduct themselves in an interview is also very important. Whether that's right or wrong, but that's the reality that we face in jobs today. Some challenges and rewards to wrap up this module. Of course, you can build a career. Work is challenging, more fulfilling. Working conditions, at least they should be better and safer. And as a rule, your manufacturing careers tend to pay more than the service sector jobs in a lot of other areas as well. If you get into your higher skilled jobs, again, if it's in the high demand areas like maintenance, and if you're interacting a lot with the technology and programming the technology, you can command a very, very good wage in manufacturing in this area. That wraps up Module 1. What we're going to do is we're going to take a little time to pair up here. What we like to do to students is sprinkle in a few little drills that just take you out of the grind of the actual classroom, and at the same time teach them a little bit about very important skills. And this one is a communications puzzle. And what you're going to do is you're going to pair up, and you go back. You face your backs to each other. One person's actually going to hold the solution to the puzzle, and you are going to put the puzzle together based on the instructions that your partner gives you. It looks real simple if you're the communicator.